Good evening, and welcome back to Terrier Nation. I'm your host, Haley Alvarez-Lauto.
And I'm Kyle Finn. On this episode of Terrier Nation, Monet and Belle Fraser break down the men's ice hockey team. Brian Durocher stepped down as head coach of the women's ice hockey team. Jessica Lam and Tyler Davis bring us the newest.
Then Mason Jablonsky and James Ninneman will catch us up on the 16-game winning streak the women's basketball team is having. And finally, Kyle and I will discuss the women's and men's lacrosse seasons.
All this and more tonight on Terrier Nation.
BU women's lacrosse is off to a strong start with 3 consecutive wins so far in the 2023 season. After their what can only be considered abysmal 2-15 performance last year, the team looks to be back better than ever. The Terriers secured a win in their season opener against Merrimack by a score of 17-7. Preseason All-Patriot League player, senior midfielder Jennifer Berry had a strong performance, leading BU in multiple categories, including goals with 6. While the Warriors were first to get on the board, BU soon took the lead and kept their synergy going in their resounding victory. A few days later in Stonehill University's first game at the Division I level, BU got an early lead and kept up their substantial advantage throughout regulation, winning 20-9. BU continued the strong momentum at their first away game, taking down Iona College 14-9. Upperclassmen players like Barry, senior midfielder Claire Gola, junior goalkeeper Riley Agris are proving to be reliable veterans who have had strong performances in all 3 games. While the roster is stacked with returning upperclassmen, the team also includes new freshman players eager to make their mark, such as midfielder Jane Feeney, who has already made a big impact, earning a hat trick against Stonehill. I look forward to seeing continued strong performances from sophomore attack Maddie Spaeth, who led the Terriers last season in goals with 29, and senior attack Lauren Kay, who led her team in points with 42. With returning players like Gola stepping up and graduate student midfielder Maddie McMaster back on the pitch after sitting out last season due to injury, this team is made up of some promising players who've already displayed great performances so far. While the Terriers have had an optimistic start to the season, I cannot stress enough the importance of continuing this momentum through the Setzer games before conference play begins against Army West Point on March 11th, who the Terriers have not won against since 2018. Last season, the Terriers lost nearly every conference match, going 1-8, with their only win coming in overtime against Bucknell. While I'm excited to see this new and improved team, I worry that they won't be able to keep up their consistency as they face more difficult opponents as they begin league play. That being said, the Terriers have shown much better offensive and defensive play in those early season games, and overall have had their best start to a season since 2010. With that, we wish the Terriers good luck, and now let's turn over to Belle and Monet with men's ice hockey.
Thanks, Haley and Kyle. Following a disappointing beanpot run that ended with a loss in the consolation round, the men's ice hockey team went on to drop 2 consecutive games to the Merrimack Warriors this past weekend. The Terriers were on the losing end of a sweep for the first time this season and suffered just their second overtime loss so far, bringing their losing streak to 4 games with a matchup defined by buzzer beaters. I'm Monet Oda, she's Belle Fraser. Belle, what is going on?
I mean, the team's hitting a rut. I think we tried to write it off, between beanpot games that BC was going to be a response game and whatever on all these things, but they had a really strong start to the season, and I think we take that for granted with the toughness of their schedule and the success they had. That wasn't expected, and honestly, it's not really normal. It's a transition year with a new head coach, a bunch of new freshmen. They have their veteran core, but they just hadn't faced much adversity yet, and this is the first time. It's kind of inevitable in college hockey and sports in general that you're going to hit bumps along the way, and I think it's obviously coming at a very unfortunate time of the year. Playoffs on the horizon, kind of started in the Beanpot tournament, which is obviously something that's really important to Boston schools, but we kind of said this last week. I'm not wholly worried because we'll talk about Saturday's game, but they kind of found their footing again there, but they're really just forced to dig deep now. And as much as it is about physical adjustments on the ice, we can talk about the power play, we can talk about the offense, it is really mental too. This team has to get their confidence back and get back that same energy that they just really haven't had the past couple weeks. I think the intensity and desperation has to be better, and that's been a big part of their identity this season. So we kind of have been saying it, but they've got everything they need to be successful. It's kind of just fine-tuning that and getting back to it. Friday's performance in Merrimack was lackluster. And after that, head coach Jay Pandolfo talked about how his team just need to work harder, get pucks down low, be a little more physical, tighten up the back end to stop opponents' odd man rushes. And there's no doubt that teams kind of know how to play BU now. They're defending them tighter. They kind of understand their style of play. So like I said, it's time to adjust. They don't have much time to do it with only 4 regular season games left, but Saturday definitely was a step in the right direction. What do you think about kind of a turnaround, if we want to call it that, despite the loss?
I definitely agree with all the points that you've made. Those 50-50 pucks really do have to get better. I think that's kind of where the Terriers are kind of losing their footing, and that's where they're losing the possession game. I think it's really important. Their zone entries on Friday weren't where they had to be. They were a lot better on Saturday, but they still lost. And while a 4-game losing streak isn't where the Terriers want to be, especially this late in the season in this last stretch heading into playoffs, it seems like the Terriers are finding their footing again with Saturday's game. We saw the return of the 1-3-1 power play. It was a formation that the Terriers have found success with earlier in the season. Kind of went away for a little bit, but associate head coach Joe Pereira brought that back a couple times on Saturday, and we saw it succeed. Ryan Green scored a power play goal with that exact same formation to tie up the game. And with the recent power play struggles this team's been going through, that was really important for them, and I think it really helped them bring that spark of energy back into Saturday's game. And to bring the team back into the game. So after going 2 for 6, I think, on the power play, it's been looking like this team is starting to get back in the groove on that man advantage. And it looks like they were a different team on Saturday than they were on Friday, despite the loss. So they're finding their groove, and they're finding their feet under them in a lot of aspects of their play, I think we saw on Saturday.
I agree. The Terriers left the first period, though, down 2-0 again. Tough deficit to get back to, especially on home ice, where they've played really well this season. But things definitely shifted in the second period, like you were saying. For one, junior goaltender Vinny Duplessis came in for Drew Comesso for the 4th time, I believe he's relieved him this season. And I think he should have started the game. Maybe that's a controversial opinion. I'm not going to sit here and not... Drew Comesso is the number 1 guy. I'm not saying he's not, but I think after the Friday game and the BC game, he obviously wasn't 100%, whether that's mental or physical. I think going into this stretch, and we talk about it, these guys just need to get their confidence back. If you need to rest him and get him ready to ride him out in Vermont and Providence and sweep both those series, start Vinny. He's a good goaltender. He has a good record. But Pandolfo postgame said he just wanted to give his team a spark. But if the way you want to give your team a spark is by putting in your backup, like why not? You're shifting the lines. Why not just start the game like that too? I'm not sure, but it did give them a spark. And the second period, like you said, was completely different from the first. Team point leader Matt Brown got them on the board almost 5 minutes into the second period and completely changed the complexion of the contest. He stopped the puck at the blue line, walked 3 Warriors through the offensive zone, snapped it low glove side to cut the deficit to 2-1. Like you said, Ryan Green scored on the power play, and there was just a boost of energy that it seemed like the BU bench hadn't had since the Beanpot semifinal. And like you said, defined by buzzer beaters. Unfortunately, Merrimack got theirs in overtime, but Lane Hudson was able to score with 1 second left in the second period to give them a 3-2 lead. Their first lead since February 3rd in Maine, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, they got out of the middle frame up 3-2. I think they got a little bit of their swagger back. And we saw a glimpse of, I think, the Terrier team that we've gotten to know and been used to this season. So I think that was a positive. I think we can definitely say, yeah, that was a solid period based on the last 3 weeks of hockey.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. I don't know if this team is particularly protective of Vinny just because he hasn't played as many games and he hasn't gotten that many minutes this season. I think he's only started like 4 games, and that was because Comesso was injured. Yeah. And Drew has been looking a little bit tired. I agree. I think Vinny should have started the game. And I would like to see him start a couple maybe this weekend or next weekend versus Vermont and Providence. Obviously, we don't make those decisions. If we were, we'd be getting paid big bucks. But we'll see how the goaltending matchup plays out in the coming weeks. Anyway, to wrap things up, as always, let's talk players of the game, players of the weekend. Who stood out to you?
Throughout the weekend, but I think in Saturday's game specifically, Dylan Peterson and Nick Zabney, they were all-stars. They were on the fourth line with Sam Stevens. That was the only line that remained unchanged from Friday's game. Pandolfo shuffled the first three lines, but they were a burst of energy from puck drop. They created a lot of offensive rushes, especially in the first period. I thought they had some of the Terriers' best chances, and I just think their buy-in was not more than the rest of the team, but they left everything out there. Pandolfo put them in during overtime with Fensori as the two forwards, which doesn't happen a lot. So I think he kind of trusted them with the momentum swings of the game, and they were just working hard. I think they showed a gritty physical edge that BU usually skates with but has been missing for a while. So I just liked all aspects of their play. They got in the corners. Peterson took that penalty in the second, and I was for it. I mean, he brought emotion back into a series and a game that had kind of been a little dull. So, yeah, I think they were skating with pride, and I hope that trickles down to the rest of the bench.
I absolutely agree with that. I do love myself a good fourth line that's gritty,
Right?
that's got the speed that Zabney's got. He's incredible. And it's been great to see Sam Stevens get more minutes this season compared to, the limited number of minutes that he got last season under O'Connell. But for me, I'm going to go a bit out of the box here and go with Jeremy Wilmer. I say out of the box, not in the context of the game. He was on the score sheet. He had 2 assists and 2 points, but kind of in the context of the season. I feel like on a roster with obvious studs like Lane Hudson and Drew Comesso, I mean, come on. Those are the names that you're going to be talking about regularly, and that's what you're going to hear. And even in terms of freshmen and maybe other players that don't get as much attention, Devin Kaplan has been the superstar in terms of development since the beginning of the season. But I think Jeremy Wilmer has really been showing how much he's grown as well. He's learning how to utilize his undersize, his smaller size, be shifty, kind of shimmy between players. And despite his quick feet, he's also been showing us that he can fight off checks. When he's taken a full hit, he's able to brush it off, bounce back to his feet, and go on the back check or recover the puck or whatever it may be. And let's talk about that assist on Lane Hudson's goal. Obviously, shout out to Vinny for his goalie assist.
Yeah,
that was wonderful to see. But I mean, Jeremy Wilmer had that coast-to-coast, basically individual play. He juked out some defenders low in the corner to pass it to Lane. It's racing the clock, obviously 1 second left in the period for Lane to score. So that was absolutely incredible to see as well. And post-game, get this, I walked by the weight room and he was going one-on-one with their strength and conditioning coach. And he wasn't stretching, he wasn't rolling out, he was throwing some good weight. So, obviously he put in a good effort, but he didn't like the results. He was back in the lab immediately trying to better himself every single day.
I mean, you love to hear that. I also think with a freshman class as talented as BU's, like Jeremy Wilmer would stick out at any Hockey East school. He's sticking out at BU, but like you said, when you have a roster of Ryan Greens, of Devin Kaplans, of Lane Hudson's, everyone's so good that you kind of forget to, give a little pat on the back to Jeremy Wilmer. Sure. He's had a great second semester, I agree. So coming up, we're going to do another optimistic preview. The Terriers will get things back on track. They're heading to Burlington, Vermont this weekend for 2 road games against UVM. I feel like we've sat here the past couple weeks and been like, the next game is a must win. It will define their season. But now with only 4 regular season games left, it really is a must win. I think I've been saying I'm not that worried, but if they drop their 5th in the road, there might be some bigger resiliency problems than we kind of think right now. Obviously, the last 3 weeks of play haven't been good, but I think this team has what it takes to kind of get back to where they were. And that group of seniors and everyone in that locker room came back because they want to win trophies for Boston University. That's still the goal. And I just don't see them going down easy. But what do you want to see from them to kind of pull out the win this weekend?
I don't want to be given a cop-out answer, and I don't want to be redundant, but they have to keep that momentum that they found in Game 2 on Saturday. It sounds obvious, but it seems like the Terriers finally found their spark with Vinny, with Matt Brown, the power play, the fourth line, and their grit. Saturday's game was so close, and Merrimack's game winner came in overtime with 0.1 seconds on the clock. And there was a review for too many men on the play as well, so it might have even come back at some point, right? With such a disheartening end to the night, it'll be easy for the team to kind of deflate a little bit, but there was energy on the bench and energy on the ice, and this squad has to harness that energy and continue to pull out some wins in Vermont. with playoffs coming up, some people have been making some noise. Hey, if they lost the 2 against Merrimack, they're not making the tournament.
No.
It might be a little early for that, I think,
Yeah.
but these upcoming 2 weeks, that's when it comes down to playoff implications, so it'll be really important. That's all the time we have today for men's ice hockey. Let's throw it over to Jessica and Tyler on women's ice hockey.
Thanks, Belle and Monet. A lot has happened with the women's hockey team. First off, the Terriers crushed the consolation at the women's Beanpot. The Terriers won 7-4 against the Harvard Crimson. The first period was a bit rough for the Terriers, being down 1-2, but the Terriers were back in action, scoring the majority of their goals in the second period. The real star of the game was Callie Shanahan, blocking 24 shots, keeping the Terriers in the lead.
In even bigger news, Brian Durocher announced he will be stepping down from his head coach position. Since the start of varsity women's hockey at BU, Durocher has been the first and only coach of the program. In his time here, Durocher racked up 336 career wins, 2 Beanpot titles, 5 consecutive Hockey East championship titles, and 6 consecutive NCAA tournament appearances.
In his career, Durocher helped shape some of the best women hockey players of our time, including 3-time Olympic gold medalist Marie-Philip Poulin. Durocher also coached 5 Terriers to All-Americans, and 6 went on to play in the Olympics. During his time at BU, his players accumulated 40 Hockey East All-Star awards in addition to 20 Hockey East All-Rookie Team nods. With all these coaching accomplishments, he has been named Coach of the Year by Hockey East and the New England Hockey Writers Association. In addition to this accolade, he also received an honorary Scarlet Key Award and the Ace Bailey Foundation Good Guy Award.
Back when he was a student at BU, Durocher was the goalie and co-captain of the men's ice hockey team. In his freshman year, Durocher won the Eberle Trophy and was an All-East selection after he led the team to success during the 1975 Beanpot Tournament. Durocher won the 1978 NCAA championship against Boston College. That same season, Durocher racked up an impressive 14-2-0 record. Overall, Durocher won 47 of the 61 games he played during his career, goaltending for the Terriers.
Despite Durocher stepping down from his head coach position, he will still remain a part of the athletics department as a special assistant to the director of athletics.
On that note, the team has wrapped up their season in the first round of the Hockey East tournament against Merrimack this past Wednesday at Walter Brown Arena, and the Terriers put up a tough fight. Both teams scored 1 goal each within the first period. By the end of the second, the score was 4-4, and no goals were made in the third, despite BU having a 15-6 shot advantage. Going into overtime, Merrimack found an opening to the back of the net, ending the Terrier season.
We congratulate the Terriers on completing their season and Coach Durocher on his successful career here at BU. Mason and James will give us the newest on women's basketball.
Thanks, Jessica and Tyler. The Boston University women's basketball team is wrapping up a sensational season. The team has won 16 straight games, going 16-0 in conference play and 21-6 overall. The Terriers sit alone atop the Patriot League, claiming the top seed with the Patriot League tournament right around the corner. In their win against Bucknell on February 18th, BU secured the Patriot League regular season championship for the first time in program history. Their next win against Army West Point on February 22nd was their 16th conference victory of the season, tying the program record set by the 2008-2009 squad. I'm Mason Jablonsky, that's James Ninneman. James, where do we begin with this elite ball club?
You know, Mason, I don't even really know where to start. They're just so good on both ends of the ball. You know, they have physicality, they have charisma, they have the shooter's touch, and they have Caitlin Weimer, who is simply a force of nature. This girl is averaging 15.5 points per game, and what's even more incredible is that she's doing that without having made a single three-point shot this entire season. Weimer does all of her damage in the paint using her 6'4" frame to rack up boards and put the ball back into the net. We've also seen Weimer assert her dominance on defense, where she has blocked 40 shots this season and collected a cool 154 rebounds. Mason, for me, the key to this team is Caitlin Weimer. Just that simple.
Yeah, James, absolutely. Caitlin Weimer is a huge presence on the glass for BU. She's also a big-time scorer, and one thing that really helps Weimer get great looks at the hoop is the incredible passing of her teammate Sydney Johnson. Johnson is a talented floor general for this Terrier squad. She's a maestro in the pick and roll and always makes the right pass, leading the team with 3.5 dimes a night, which is the second most among Patriot League players. Johnson also knows when to look for a basket herself, and she can convert on all 3 levels. She'll drive to the rim when she spots a seam in the defense, she'll pull up in the mid-range if she has space, and she'll even pop the 3 if the defense goes under the screen in the pick and roll. Johnson is a great decision maker and an invaluable orchestrator on offense for these Terriers.
Absolutely, Mason. And let's not forget about Alex Giannaros either, who is simply a menace from behind the three-point line. Giannaros has an incredible 55% success rate on the lawn ball, and Mason, it's not like she's taking cheap shots either. No, she's not afraid to launch the ball from anywhere on the court, and she's known to connect. She's such a threat that opposing teams have to pick her up as soon as she crosses the half-court line, and I think this tends to expose the defense a little bit and leaves room for players like Caitlin Weimer to finish the job in the paint.
Absolutely, James. Giannaros is an astonishing sharpshooter. Plus, the Terriers are simply unstoppable when Maggie Pina joins the action from downtown. Pina leads the team with 45 made triples on the season, shooting at a 40% clip from deep. Though she is known for her long ball, Pina has also shown that she's not afraid to mix it up down low and take the ball to the rim. In BU's win against Army West Point on February 23rd, we saw Pina reach deep into her bag of tricks, going to work in the paint. She pulled out the Euro step for a sweet and one finish early in the game, and then Pina showed off the teardrop for another and one opportunity during the final frame. Pina is putting up 10 points a night this season, and she gets the job done with her smooth stroke beyond the arc and the finesse inside for some nifty finishes at the cup. So James, the Terriers have the personnel and the spacing to score from anywhere on the court, but their dominance doesn't just come on offense. James, what do you see from this squad on the defensive end?
I touched on this a bit earlier, but one of the calling cards for this team is their ability to grab boards, rebounds. Obviously, we've already mentioned Caitlin Weimer, who's 3rd in the Patriot League in rebounding, but we haven't really brought up Maren Durant yet. Durant is simply a stud on D. She's got over 300 rebounds so far this season, both offensive and defensive. And to top it off, she also has a respectable 36 blocks to her name. Mason, I think that having her as such a formidable defensive presence really takes pressure off of Weimer and lets each player focus more on their individual strengths,
Exactly, James. Durant provides the Terriers such great size and physicality in the paint, which really makes it hard for teams to get clean looks at the bucket. Teams are shooting just 37% from the field against these Terriers, which is the lowest mark in the Patriot League. And give credit to Sydney Johnson, who has such quick hands on defense as she's able to jump into passing lanes and snatch the ball away, generating great fast break opportunities for her team. Sydney Johnson leads the Patriot League with 1.8 steals per night. The Terriers are so skilled at turning defense into offense, and on average, they're outscoring their opponents by a whopping 12.1 points per game this season. So James, how about a little magic trick?
How about it?
All right, James, take a look at this. This is a trick the kids used to show me on the playground back in middle school. If I can dime this ball off of a solid surface and catch it on the rebound, then the Terriers will win their first game of the upcoming Patriot League tournament right here at Case Gym.
Sounds good to me, Mason. Solid surface? What solid surface are you thinking?
Well, I don't know, James. How about that wall right over there?
The wall? What
yeah.
wall? Hey!
Well, James, I guess we have some playoff success to look forward to, don't we?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, there we go. The Terriers will continue their historic campaign on February 25th against the Lehigh Mountain Hawks down in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And mark your calendars, the Patriot League quarterfinals are set to tip off at the Roof on March 6th. Tune into this BU women's basketball squad if you're not already, because they're making some serious noise. With that, let's throw it back to Kyle and Haley.
Thanks, Mason and James. The Terriers men's lacrosse team is 2 games into the new season, both being nail-biters right to the end. Starting the season ranked 14th nationally, BU played their first game against the Vermont Catamounts on Saturday, February 11th. It was a battle between the conference champions from the Patriot League and the America East Conference. Jumping to the second half, the Catamounts held a 13-6 lead heading into the fourth quarter. Vermont won the third quarter, scoring 5 goals to BU's 1. The Terriers dominated the fourth, scoring 6 unanswered goals, but fell short of tying with 2 big saves by Vermont. The Catamounts would hold on to win 14-12. Heading into Game 2 of the season, the Terriers faced off against the 1-0 Bryant University Bulldogs. Jumping to the second half again, The Bulldogs held the biggest lead of 14-11 with under 10 minutes to go into the game. This deficit gave the Terriers life as they responded with 4 straight goals to give them the lead with 5 minutes left. Bryant tied the game at 15, and the game went into overtime. Thomas Niederhaus of the Terriers provided the game-winning goal for a 16-15 final score. BU dominated every game category, especially shooting 50 shots on net. Thomas Niederhaus had 4 goals, with the game-winner OT goal being number 4. Looking ahead at the schedule, the 1-1 Terriers will play the 2-0 UMass Amherst Minutemen on Saturday, February 25th, with the game time set for 3 o'clock at Garber Field. We wish the Terriers men's lacrosse team the best of luck in competition.
Thanks, Kyle. And that's all the time we have for tonight on Terrier Nation. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter for the latest Terrier sports updates at Terrier Nation 10. I'm Haley Alvarez-Lauto.
And I'm Kyle Finn. From all of us here at Terrier Nation, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.